food stamps, otherwise known as SNAP benefits, to be paid in full for all beneficiaries in the month of November, and where we currently stand with the distribution of money for the millions of beneficiaries that are still due a whole lot of money. Plus, any retroactive or back pay, again, for millions of people that are due additional benefits. I'm going to discuss all of that for you here in this video, and I also do have this article right here, which I will be popping up on the screen in just a minute, so you can see and read for yourself exactly what they're talking about right here. I'll also explain all the details in this article here, and what recently changed here that I think we all need to take a look at, because this is actually good for beneficiaries. I also want to talk about the current state of the government shutdown, where we are at right now. I've had a bunch of people reaching out to me on this. It's not over yet, even though the headlines make it sound like, oh, it's over. It's definitely not. We still have multiple days of this to go. We'll discuss all of that in this video. Okay, so over the last several days, obviously a whole lot of changes on the food stamp, the SNAP situation. I've been covering it in live streams, in videos. There's been a lot of back and forth, flipping and flopping. You know the whole story at this point. Anyway, I want to break down exactly what happened last night and why this is actually very pivotal for this whole food stamp / SNAP situation, how this is good for beneficiaries and the full distribution of your benefit. There's actually two different things that happened last night that are looking very, very good. First off, let's talk about situation one. Let's pop up this article right here, right now. Feel free to read through the details of this. I'll explain what this means. I'm not going to read it, but you can feel free to read through it. I'll just explain what it means here. Okay, so a few days ago, obviously, we heard out of the courts that the administration was ordered to pay full SNAP benefits, right? The administration came in, got the Supreme Court involved, and said, no, we're not going to. We need this 48-hour stay, essentially holding everything. And then they basically said, we're going to take this to court, and then the appeals court would look at this, okay? Long story short, late last night, the appeals court came out and they rejected the bid out of the administration to basically say, can you block this for us, the distribution of full benefits? And the appeals court said, no, we're not going to block that. In other words, rejected the bid out of the administration to actually pay the full benefit. In other words, the administration needs to pay the full benefit. Long story short, the administration needs to pay the full benefit based on this rejection of their bid to basically have it blocked, okay? That came out last night. That's a good thing for the beneficiaries, essentially meaning that, well, the administration is kind of losing when it comes down to the federal court here coming in and rejecting, again, basically them saying, we don't want to pay the full benefit, and can you reject this for us, right? So that's what it's coming down to. Okay, so that's that. That's pretty good stuff, and again, highlighted here in this article. And again, feel free to read through it. A lot of information there, but just wanted to point that out for you really quickly. Okay, so that just basically says, yes, full benefits will be paid. It's going to take a little bit more time here. That stay out of the Supreme Court that was handed down on Friday night is actually going to be extended out until the end of the day on Tuesday, just so they want to keep that clear. So nothing's going to happen really as far as the distribution of full benefits until after that. So basically late Tuesday is when we'll probably get any new additional information on the distribution of full benefits once that stay is lifted. Okay, so that's that. All right, so anyway, that's really good for the food stamp situation, even though we're basically right here in the middle of November at this point now. So they've wasted a lot of time. And actually also in this article, and what they mentioned here in the appeals court is the judge is basically saying the government sat on their hands for a month. They knew this was coming. They did nothing. They sat on their hands. Huge shock. Government sat on their hands and did nothing? Wow, really? I think a lot of us are super shocked right now. Not. Right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, now that's that. Now, let's also talk about where we currently stand with this current government shutdown situation. I've had a number of people reaching out asking like, hey, I heard it, we're not in a government shutdown anymore. No, that's not how it is, okay? I know I've seen the headlines out there as well saying, oh, government shutdown's over, this is it, this is great, we're open back up. Not really. That's not how it works yet, okay? So what happened is last night the Senate voted. It was a procedural vote. In other words, kind of like the practice vote, like a warm-up type vote. The vote came in 60-40. That's a pass, right? You only need 60 votes. They passed it. What this basically is, it's opening up the floodgate for additional voting to happen more throughout this week, okay? So no, the government is not reopened yet, still very much in a shutdown right here, right now. However, realistically, we're probably only down to a matter of days here until this thing is completely done, okay? But let's focus on what is within this legislation that they passed that's actually really, really good for SNAP beneficiaries, food stamp beneficiaries. Here's what they're going to do. Within this, it's a short-term extension of government funding out until January 30th, okay? Now, generally, every single year at the end of September, they have a dozen appropriation bills. In other words, what they do is they take basically a dozen smaller bills, they add them all together into one large federal funding bill, and then they pass it as one big piece of legislation, but it really contains a dozen, 12 other basically appropriation bills, okay? One of them is funding for the Department of Agriculture. That's what basically administers, the SNAP program, USDA, right? United States Department of Agriculture is what that stands for. Okay, so anyway, within this short-term extension out until January 30th, they have 3 full-year funding appropriations within it. The one that I want to focus on is the Department of Agriculture full year funding appropriation within it, okay? So even though this would be a short-term funding bill to reopen the government until January 30th, this actually has full year funding within it for the food stamp program by fully funding the Department of Agriculture. Does that make sense? Okay? So even though that this would be a short-term funding bill for the federal government out until January 30th, it's actually funding the food stamp program out until September 30th of next year, 2026. That's great. In other words, once they get this thing fully passed through the Senate, they pass it on to the House, which they also need to redo again. They need to vote on it and pass it. The House has been out of session for the last 8 weeks. That's 2 months, by the way. They've been on vacation. Could you imagine a 2-month vacation? How nice would that be? And getting paid to do it, by the way. Yes, very much so. So anyway, the House would need to come back and re-vote on this and pass it, provided they don't make any changes to it. It would go onto the president's desk for a signature. If the House amends it in any way, shape, or form and passes it, it would then need to go back to the Senate again to be passed, and then it would go to the president's desk for a signature. My point is, we are not done with this government shutdown, not even close. We probably have another week to go, realistically. Before the government is fully reopened and funded, we probably have another week of this. Just being fair. Maybe it's 5 days, maybe it's 6 days, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 7, maybe it's 8. I don't know, but roughly probably another week of this is how much longer we have with this government shutdown until we actually get into the clear and that, we're in clear sailing, as in the program is fully funded at that point. Okay, so with all this being said, again, as I highlighted here in this article, the information that came across last night with the Federal Appeals Court, basically saying that the order, the request out of the administration to block the full funding of SNAP benefits, that's been rejected, as well as basically the government almost being reopened here and the full year funding appropriation within the government bill here, or the bill to reopen the government. What this really means is that full SNAP benefits are likely going to be paid probably significantly sooner than we think, okay? They've been saying for a while now, it could be weeks or months. Okay, well, based on what we're seeing here, these two different things, with the rejection out of the Federal Appeals Court from late last night, as well as the Senate voting on this, again, with the government reopening and the full year funding for SNAP food stamps, realistically, we're probably down to a few more days here, and then the full benefits will likely be distributed, okay? So when could this possibly happen? I mean, realistically, I think probably next week would probably be a pretty good bet on this. And I know that's probably not what anybody wants to hear, like, another week of this? Realistically, at the speed that they move, yes, unfortunately, probably another week. That's probably where we're at right now, until full benefits will likely be hitting EBT cards for the people that have not received it. Okay, now people that have only received a partial payment, again, roughly 65% based on the money that was allocated earlier last week. If you want to see your retroactive, your back pay, again, that'll likely roll in probably this next week sometime. It's going to be dependent on what the lawmakers do with this, government reopening / the legislation that they're working on. Okay, so that's going to play another big part of it. Not only that, but also the speed of your state as well to get the money and distribute it to you. So we've got a lot of steps here to go. Even though you see the headlines out there saying, government's going to reopen. It's going to be a little while here. Again, just being fair with you, so we're all on the same page here, so we all have a basic understanding of where this is at. Anyway, I hope this helps you understand this. Again, if you have not done so, if you're new here, please consider subscribing, 100% free. Big subscribe button down below the video. I really appreciate that. Otherwise, check out the other 6,000 videos here on the channel. Otherwise, just stay tuned. I've been out in a lot of live streams lately, a bunch of videos, a lot of details coming across the wire. I guarantee you we're going to see more information, maybe the rest of today, probably overnight, tomorrow. We're certainly going to see a whole lot more information coming across the wire on this. Please make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned. We are not over with this yet. Unfortunately, we have a few more days to go on this. I will continue to keep you updated, as well as beyond this. There's going to be a whole lot more things, especially with the announcement out of the president yesterday on a $2,000 dividend. In other words, stimulus check to all of us. There's a lot of things that are happening right now. Please subscribe if you have not done so. Share the video. Big share button down below. Stay tuned. I'll catch you again later in another video, another live stream. I will see you again very, very soon. And I hope this helps you understand the situation. Please have a nice day. Thanks again for watching this, and I'll catch you again later in the next video.